any number of people, telling them things about government contracting that are half-truths or completely false.
When people come into the government, so I want to sell to the government, I ask them, what do you want to sell? I don't know. I just want to make money. Matter of fact, someone told me this today.
But the U.S. government recorded $760 billion in obligations across the board.
Right? And so out of all the companies selling X, why should the government pick you?
Basic ordering agreements, blanket purchase agreements, and indefinite delivery contracts.
Options are optional.
Government contracting is not for everyone.
Welcome to my channel. My name is Dr. Curtis A. Merriweather Jr., and you can just simply call me Dr. Kurt. Now, the purpose of this channel is to educate entrepreneurs. Now, the way we educate entrepreneurs is through education, consultation, and training support services. Our goal for this channel is to lower your learning curve and accelerate your business profitability. And we do this by simply providing advanced educational principles based on practical experience and lessons learned based on 27 years in the government contracting space. Now, if you'll notice on the screen, you'll see my Instagram handle. Please note that my Instagram handle has changed if you've been following this channel for any length of time. Now you'll see our URL for our teaching platform. That's 8figuregovcon.com. Definitely give us a browse, go to our course store library and see the course offerings that we have. Now, I do want to let you know, for those who have talked about, being able to make the programs more accessible, we have partnered with AfterPay and Klarna, so you can get more flexible payment arrangements using the options on that page. So definitely avail yourself. Now, before I get into my topic for today, I want you to like, share, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. I want to thank all of you guys who have subscribed to the channel thus far. I want to thank you for your super chats and your super thanks. They are greatly appreciative. Thank you for showing your love and support for this channel. Okay, now that we have all of that out the way, without any further ado, he is no stranger to this platform. I want to bring along my friend. He is the CEO of the American Small Business Coalition. He is no stranger to this platform. He's going around touring these days, dropping content all across the continental U.S. and on social media more and more these days. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome to the stage my friend, Guy Timberlake.
So what's going on, Kurt?
I'm doing well.
Hey, it's always good to see you, and I always love being here on the 8-Figure GovCon platform. Let's have some fun. Let's drop some nuggets.
Let's drop some nuggets. I've been doing this series because I've been looking at, just kind of looking at the analytics and statistics from the channel, just hearing the comments from our subscribers and those who view the channel. And they really like to hear about the things that I've learned in my government contracting journey. So last week I dropped a video on the 5 things we wish we would have known. That was me and my good friend Serena, our friend actually. And so today I talked to you about this and you said absolutely. And you said, let's talk about the 5 things I wish everyone knows coming into the space.
Absolutely.
So you gave me kind of a pre-list of where we were going to go in this conversation. Just like every time we get together, it may twist and turn, but I believe we're going to add a lot of value to the viewers who have tuned in for this particular video. So let's just jump right in. You said the very first thing you wish that everyone knew about government contracting was the importance of contracting vehicles. So
yeah,
go ahead and unpack that one.
So let me throw this out there because this is gonna be our first twist. So it is about the importance of contract vehicles, but it's understanding the relevance of them or the irrelevance of them. Contract vehicles are one of the ways that the U.S. government executes contracts, puts orders and money on paper to get it to you so that you can actually go and do the work, deliver the goods, the services that they need for their needs and requirements. And so let me start with a little bit of a story about contract vehicles in the context of what they used to mean to me, what they mean today, and how you need to understand how to look at them. So Kurt, you and I have been at this a long time, okay? And so there's a lot of things that our good friends out here are going to see today about federal contracting that did not exist when you and I got started in this journey. For me, there was no internet when I first got started, okay? We're going back to the 80s. But also there are things like some of the tools that they may use. SAM.gov wasn't a thing. In fact, even the predecessor to that, FedBizOps, was not a thing. So there weren't these resources you could use to be able to get information, access to opportunities, and so forth. But with all that said, the one thing that has changed the most is literally the spend by the U.S. government. Last fiscal year, so I'm talking the end of FY 2023 versus 2024, because we're still waiting for those numbers to get tabulated. But the U.S. government recorded $760 billion in obligations across the board. That's a huge amount. In 1994, when the government passed a couple laws, one of them was known as FASA, the Federal Acquisition Streamlining Act, they spent $187 billion government-wide. And at that time, dollars committed to contract vehicles out of the entire fiscal spend was less than 10%. And so let me stop for a second. And Kurt, I want you to kind of jump on this with me for a second. Of every dollar spent by the U.S. government that fiscal year, over 90% was placed against a instrument that was not a single award or multiple award contract vehicle. It was done against a contract and a purchase order, and that was it. And so you had a GSA schedule back then. Yeah, you weren't doing a whole lot. All right. I mean, literally out of $187 billion, less than 10% was going to any of those. But the other part was one of the contract vehicles people know a lot about right now, GWACs, didn't even exist at that time. So they had $0 because they had not yet been invented. So the whole point at the time was this. When you look at how the government spends money, you have two categories of spending: awards and indefinite delivery vehicles. IDVs, as they're called, are the contract vehicles. If you've ever heard the term, hunting license, you ever heard the term multiple award contract, they're talking at least in part about IDVs. Yes. Now, the trick about IDVs is a lot of people think that all IDVs are multiple award, and they're not. Only 2 of the 5 are full-time multiple award. The other 3, which of one of them accounts for most of the money going to any kind of contract vehicle, the other 3 can be either single award or multiple award. And year over year, we'll run the numbers for 2024 soon, but year over year, the number of dollars going to single awards on those 3, all right, basic ordering agreements, blanket purchase agreements, and indefinite delivery contracts. You all know them as IDIQs, but there's actually 3 flavors of them. Those 3 account for the bulk of spending when the U.S. government puts money on a contract vehicle. And the IDC, home of the IDIQ, is running away the biggest. So here's the trick. The thing I want people to understand as they're coming into federal contracting today is they're going to get sold a bill of goods. Some of them are intentional. Some of them are just, not. Right. but you're going to hear a lot about contract vehicles. Go get a GSA schedule. Go get an OASIS. Go get on this contract. So that's great. But today, when you look at the total spend, again, I said $760 billion. All right, 46% of that was not spent on a contract vehicle.
Yes.
So what we don't know right now walking in the door is which pot represents the greater opportunity for me. And it's not about just what the government's buying, but it's who's buying. When you consider, on the average, when you look at the total spend and the total number of contracting organizations at the department level, there's 72 of them. Okay. Only 60 use the GSA schedule. So
Right.
There are organizations, entire agencies out there that are not placing orders against the schedule completely. Now, the same can be said for almost all the other ones. The most used instrument in all of contracting is a purchase order. 67 agencies use that pretty much all the time. So the number one thing I want people to know as it relates to contract vehicles is they are not the end all be all. There's not the only way a government agency will buy from you. You don't know if you need a single award or a multiple award, but understand 3-to-1 plus single award dollars outpace multiple award dollars across the board.
Absolutely.
So that's the one I'll start with.
Now, just because I know we have an audience that's very diverse and we got folks at different levels in their government contracting life cycle. Can you give them a very basic definition? Because that term contract vehicles, you and I know what it means, but it may be new for a lot of our viewers. So can you just at a very basic layman's term describe what a contract or define what a contract vehicle is?
Sure, absolutely. So when you talk about contract vehicle, the easiest way to describe it is to talk about the category name given to it by the government. So an indefinite delivery vehicle. And basically, it is an instrument that they can use to spend money and buy goods and services over a short term or a long term. Their primary purpose is allowing the government to do recurring purchases. It could be for the same thing. They could buy, 10-year supply of motor oil from you, but they want you to keep it and then ship it to them in monthly allotments because they don't have space to store it, at their location. And this is a real scenario. I lived through this. And so you get paid every time you ship one out. You ship it, you bill them. You ship it, you bill them. But they maximize their discount on the contract by negotiating with you for 5 years versus 1 year. So that's the essence of it. The contract vehicle is effectively a contract that can vary in length currently from literally a few months to 10 years, quite honestly. Now, you're not guaranteed all 10 of those years because there's this thing called options. And so each contract will usually have a base period and then option years. Base period can be 1 year, it can be 3 years, and then everything else is an option. And based on what's going on for the government, they're happy with the work, things are on plan, they still have the money they need coming in, they're still in need for the requirement, they will exercise that option each year, and that continues your ability to work with them under that contract instrument.
No, absolutely. I tell my students, options are optional. The government has the opportunity.
It's right there in the name.
to either continue or terminate that engagement.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it can work both ways. I mean, quite honestly, you as a company, you may have a reason for it to not continue. And you can choose to potentially not exercise the option yourself. Because it is a contract, you've got to sign that option when it comes across.
Yeah. Yep. No, that's good. That's good. Anything else you want to say about? Because I know you can spend a whole lot of time. I mean, you threw out 5 different contract types. That could be a video in and of itself, because a lot of people are still just running to sam.gov and thinking it's the only way to secure contracts. And I tell my students that it's not true. Just like all contract awards are not contained in USA spending in that PDF.
That is correct.
A conversation for a different day.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many places you have to look, and Kurt, we've talked about this. I mean, the big, surprise for a lot of people is when they start going out and start trying to swallow the ocean, all this information about all these opportunities, and at some point, hopefully, they find out they really only need to focus over here.
Yes.
And then there's enough money being spent over there in that one direction, then hopefully we'll ever win in a lifetime.
Right.
All right, that there's a level of need that is going on. And so you don't need to work with the government. You need to work with the government, and the government, and be very specific about it. It's being targeted.
That's a good tee up for what we're going to talk about later. I'm going to hold off because I got this. I feel like going down a rabbit hole. I think, okay, just quickly. It concerns me when people come into the government. So I want to sell to the government. I ask them, well, what do you want to sell? I don't know. I just want to make money. Matter of fact, someone told me this today. I was out and about, and someone told me I want to do government contracting. I just said, great. I said, what do you want to do in government contracting? They said, I don't know. I just need to make money. I say, well, do you have a value proposition? They were like, yeah. So they told me what the value proposition is, and they told me, kind of went on. I asked questions, but it baffles me how many people come to this big space. You talked about $700-800 billion. We can get into a conversation talking about the mandatory versus discretionary budget and how the federal government spends money, and then the numbers go up and up and up when you include the mandatory budget into the discretionary. But it amazes me how some people come to this space with no clue of what A, the government buys, and B, why they should buy from them. There's a whole bunch of companies out there, and you're not the only one that wants to sell X. Right. And so out of all the companies selling X, why should the government pick you? But
Kurt, so let's be honest for a minute. Okay, so there are lots of different types of people that are being attracted to federal contracting. You've got those people that worked in it like you did, all right, on behalf of the government, doing things, and then made the transition and came out and turned your knowledge and skills into a business. You've got folks like me who kind of came to it organically. I was never seeking to be a government contractor. I just happened to go to work for a company that worked with the Intel community, and lo and behold, here I am, 36 years later. But then you've got people who are being drawn in by the snake oil. And they're being sold a bill of goods by any number of people, telling them things about government contracting that are half truths or completely false. Then there's just the good marketing going on. You've got agencies like SBA, and you've got, presidential, mandates coming out about working with certain types of businesses and so forth. And that sends a message to people. And it says, well, they're talking about me. I need to show up. Well, here's the deal. That is that much of the story.
Yes.
All right. And not always even necessarily the real story. What I will say is government contracting is not for everyone. And I don't think it really should be, in my opinion. And the reason is because there are some people taking for granted that this is just business. Kurt, I know the work you did, back, when you were supporting the Navy. Was that just business?
Oh no, people
died. I was going to say, were there lives on the line with the work you did?
Absolutely.
Right. And so that's the part where I will get a little indignant when people are taking this for granted, because I got friends and family out there doing work in a lot of different places, and I want to make sure that they have what they need so that they can come home to their families and loved ones. Absolutely. And so it's not just a business. This is not just a transaction. And so the people that are coming in, through the door of the middleman, through the door of, they owe me 23%, let me tell you, that's not the right answer. That's not the right way to get this started. And I give everyone the same amount of credit. I believe that there is something about you wherever you're coming from, that could be of value to somebody else, government, commercial, whatever it is.
Absolutely.
And so the people that you're meeting, Curtis, like this, that I know, I talked to someone like that today that says, I want to be in government contracting, but haven't really thought about what you want to do. Stop. Just stop. Go on my LinkedIn profile. Guy Timberlake, I'm on LinkedIn. There's only 2 of us on LinkedIn, and you will see the clear difference between him and me. But what I will say is, I wrote an article. It's called Government Contracting is Not a Job. All right. I need you to go read that article. And the reason is, it's what Kurt just talked about. People are saying, I want to do government contracting. Government contracting is not the job. It's the skill set, the ability, the product that you bring to it that you then apply to working with the federal government.
Absolutely. No, that's rich. That's really rich, because I remember, especially the work that we do and have done for DoD and the intelligence community. When people make mistakes, people die.
Yep.
So it's not a game, and I think a lot of people are just looking at this as a quick buck. Government contracting, as you know, changed my life. It changed your life, but I'm very concerned that some people are not coming in recognizing the seriousness, the gravity of the type of work we do, especially in specific spaces.
Well, and let's dial it down just a bit. Let's you and I be nice for a minute,
okay,
and not talk about people dying for one time. Okay, let's talk about some of the other impacts that
right.
It could have. And so, let's say we're working with Department of Education, and we're an organization that does collections on the loans for Department of Education.
Right.
You heard this one, right? So we have an impact on the lives of people that we're interacting with on behalf of the government. And if we don't do right by them, it can have a negative impact.
Of course.
And there is a company that I know of, I think in the last year, got debarred from federal contracting for improper activities related to loan programs at Department of Energy. All right. Yep. So, Department of Education. I'm sorry.
I understand.
Yeah. And so it's not just about people living and dying necessarily by bullets and bombs and things like that. This is just their everyday lives. You look at the things going on right now, in your neck of the woods, Milton and Helene just, wrought, just tragedy, right, all over the Southeast, and all these things. And so you've got these other agencies going down there and trying to do the work that they do. Well, if you're one of the providers of goods and services to FEMA and Army Corps of Engineers and so forth, and you're selling them crap or inadequate products and services, that impacts their ability to help these people, our fellow Americans, and others to recover from these kind of things. And so this is serious. This is not a game. It's not a joke. The government contracting is not intended to be how you get generational wealth. That can be a byproduct of you doing good work and being recognized for that good work by getting contracts.
Absolutely.
And so, not taking anything away from it, this is a capital activity. You are here to make money.
Yes.
So, unless you are one of the nonprofits working with the U.S. government, and even they make a lot of money.
Yes.
This is not about nonprofit. This is about coming in and doing the right thing, doing good business. Effectively, the thing that we talk about all the time, the U.S. government has a role in federal agencies. It's a performance improvement officer, and these people are responsible for finding ways for their organizations, the government as a whole, and their respective agencies to do better, in being stewards of taxpayer dollars. To do better in the things that impact their mission. And so when you go sell them something, I want everyone to think right now what I'm about to say and take this to heart. You're not there to sell them IT services. You're not there to sell them construction services or pallets of bricks or anything like that. You're there to help them improve. Think about that. Your job is to leave them better than you found them. how can you help through the things that you do in your company? How do you help that agency improve itself, do better? Because the services that they're providing are going to be used by citizens, by corporations, by other agencies. And so that's the impact we're trying to have.
No, that's good. That's good. Oh, we're going to keep moving because we can park there. Your number two
Number
thing,
two.
thing that you wish people would know about government contracting is this thing called the SBA, Small Business Administration Scorecard.
Yeah. So the SBA Scorecard is something that the U.S. government uses to effectively track its performance in working with small business concerns. So what I want you to know before you come into contracting, before you see all these A's and A pluses on the scorecard, understand how the sausage is made. So the first thing, not all the dollars went to small business on a contract. In fact, there's about $7.5 billion represented in there that was actually a subcontract from a company that's a prime contractor for Department of Energy, but they act as the government. And so if you're not paying attention, it looks like a contract, but it's really a subcontract. Those dollars are being counted as prime dollars to small business, and that's just should not be the case. So in the overall spend that you see, you can negate $7.5 billion. But wait, there's more. Then there's the $30 billion in that number that was won by small businesses without any assistance from the U.S. government. What do I mean by that? It means that they won contracts that were not set aside for a small business. They were full and open competition. But the government claims those dollars as a success in them helping get dollars to small business. So let me call this what it is. It's punching up. You know, Curtis, we've seen that, man. MEP, guys like that over the years, PGI, we've seen companies like this punch up. They will look up, they see a piece of work they want to go after. They think they're as good or better than the large prime that's in there. They go move them out of the way and take the business. And that happens. And so the bottom line is $37.5 billion out of the $185 billion they claimed last year was not the result of the government truly helping small business or using a small business sole source or set aside to get that work in dollars to small businesses. But they have goals to do those things, and I'm not sure why those are counted in the goals. So now we're down to, well, we're down $37.5 billion. My only question is, do they still have an A? Okay, so there's part of it. The whole point of it is also that not every agency is represented on the SBA scorecard. Only agencies that are bound by the CFO Act, effectively FAR agencies, show up on the scorecard. That means organizations like Federal Reserve, like NCUA, Smithsonian Institution, and others who are not bound by the FAR, they don't show up in that report. Now, they work with a lot of small businesses too. They do a lot of great jobs over there. Heck, you go over to Smithsonian Institution and talk to my buddy Rudy Watley, who's been there forever, as long as I've been in business, you know, working with the government, and he will go out of his way to put qualified, relevant small businesses on contract with Smithsonian. All right, you've been doing it for a long time, but you're not going to see that showing up on the scorecard. So what I want you to know is if the information you're using in making decisions is flawed, kind of like the stuff you get from those people slinging middleman stuff, then your decisions that you make are also going to be flawed.
No, that's good. That's good. And I do recommend that people go and actually look at the SBA scorecard and just see how the agencies that you're interested in doing business with, see how they stack up.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Look, and don't get me wrong, there's people at all these agencies who are busting their humps to actually make these things happen. And they have a lot of adversity,
Yes.
things working against them all the time. So I don't take anything away from them for the efforts they're making. For me, this is just simply a truth and reporting type of thing. And again, it's the rules are written for it to be represented this way. So they're not doing anything wrong. All right. They are working within the rules they have right now. I think the rules need to change.
No, I agree. I agree. I agree. Okay. Let's keep moving.
All
Number
right.
3. Tell me, what should small businesses know about business development?
Hey, let me start with this. Business development is probably not what you think it is. I'll start there. Um, Business development is a derivative of sales, but it is different than sales. And the reason I say that is because, very simply put, sales, which I've done for years and years, is a transactional activity. I call someone, I visit someone, I, describe something to them. They like it, they don't like it, and a piece of business follows. Purchase order, credit card, whatever happens, we're done. And we move on to the next one. Now, there's account management too, so I can hopefully nurture that and keep things going. But business development, very rarely are you going to find things in the federal government that are going to work from a transactional standpoint. There is going to be work at some level that has to be put in, that you have to go and develop the opportunity. Because I can tell you, your customer on the other side, they're developing it internally. They have a whole process they have to follow that starts with when they identify something they need to actually getting it on contract. And yes, they can do micro purchases. They're just using a streamlined approach of that process to get to that buy of up to $10,000. So the bottom line is, business development, you need to invest in understanding what the growth life cycle looks like based on what you plan to sell and how your customers are going to buy it. There is a huge difference in how you sell to the government if almost everything you do is coming out as a simplified acquisition versus a large multi-million dollar contract. It's a whole different level of investment that you have to make. You need to figure out how to leverage the established processes and systems in there to, one, allay as much risk as possible. That's what business development's all about. It's about having good information to make good decisions. Ergo, you eliminate or mitigate risk to the best of your ability. And there's a lot more involved. I mean, there are relationships. There is creating visibility for yourself. That's the marketing part. There is making a plan for how you're going to do it. That's the strategy part. There is, and I'm going to say this for everyone for the record, business development, all right, as a step in the process, comes before capture. Okay. Capture is where you go make the decision on how you're going to win the business. Business development, that's your little intelligence community inside your company that you're getting smarter about the opportunity and the customers. So business development, however you do it, if your BD person has closing responsibility, that's fine. But you need to understand fundamentally what the different aspects of the BD life cycle are so that you're getting them done correctly and completely. Otherwise, you're going to operate at a level of throwing crap at the wall to see what sticks.
No, that's good stuff. You're spot on. All the way from the ideation, the identification of opportunities, positioning the business, maybe figuring out where the opportunities are for marketing so you can get your visibility out there, customer intimacy, all of these things,
Correct.
the hot buttons, the pain points. What are the things keeping your customers up at night? And then using that information in that kind of information gathering phase to make sure that you can actually storyboard out and then eventually write a very strong, compelling proposal that's not just a regurgitation of what the customer said in the statement of work, but what is your specific tailored approach to solving their problem.
Correct.
And I oftentimes see new companies, all they want to do is regurgitate what the statement of work is saying in their proposal write-up, and then they wonder why they didn't win. You didn't tell them anything novel. You didn't give them any real solution set for how to solve their problem. Your understanding of the problem and solving the problem are not the same thing.
And let me do a good news scenario here for people too. So we talked earlier about the difference in spending, back years ago to now. So let me do another one of those in reverse. So in 1994, I mentioned there was a law that was passed. It's called FASA, Federal Acquisition Streamlining Act. Don't expect that to matter to anybody right now except for this next part. One of the elements that was created as a result of that was what is called the simplified acquisitions procedures. So if you happen to be doing some light reading and read the FAR, you'll get the FAR Part 13, and that's where you'll see all this information in there. It includes micro purchases, but it also includes buys made by the government that are reserved for small business concerns between the dollar amounts of $10,000 and $250,000. Now, the beauty of it is the government's position on these buys is we're going to make an award to a small business unless we can't find them. And so when they can't find them, well, the result is about $13 billion a year that's reserved for small business goes to other than small business because we're not showing up. We're not paying attention. But the point being, though, is the government spent less than $1 billion on the first year of simplified acquisitions. They spent $27 billion last year. So I want you to think about this, that there is this work out there. And what Curtis said earlier was correct about the proposals and things like that. But the beautiful thing about simplified acquisitions is you're typically doing a request for quote as opposed to a request for proposal. That means it's moving quicker. There's less of a response you have to write up. It's usually pricing, maybe some supporting information, and the government is looking at you first as a small business concern that is relevant and viable and all these things.
No, you're spot on. Since we talked about briefly, I mentioned RFP. You mentioned the RFQ.
Yes.
Talk briefly about the pros and cons of RFI versus sources sold.
So, man. So let me say this. This is one of those conversations. We need to have one of these just on this topic, but I am not a proponent of doing business with the government based on blindly responding to as many or every RFIs that I can get my hand on. It's a losing proposition. So this is where you start getting into something Curtis mentioned earlier about identifying your customers and being very specific, developing intimacy and so forth. So if I've picked my targets in the government, for the most part, I'm only going to pay attention to stuff that they're doing, right? And not the other agencies over here until I increase my capacity and my ability to work with them. And so an RFI, request for information, is a marketing activity by the U.S. government. It is a market research activity also. They're trying to get information from you so that they can start making some determinations about their next steps for a potential requirement. Now, that alone for a lot of people is good enough reason to respond to an RFI. So let me give you the reasons why you don't want to do that. The first one is the protections afforded in an RFI are not the same as those afforded in an RFP or RFQ. What does that mean? If you include sensitive or proprietary information in an RFI, because the government does not afford the same protections, because there's no intent by the government to make an award as a result of that RFI, one of the outcomes that I've lived through and been on both sides of over the years is they can take what you wrote and say, that's a really good idea. And then if Curtis is one of my existing contractors on contract in my agency, I can say, Curtis, can you do this? And if he gives me the high sign, I write a task order against his contract and we're done here. Now, I've seen that happen. I've also been on the other side where I submitted one of those and that happened to me. I was also the vendor that got the work. So I've seen that from both sides. You need to be careful about what you disclose in there. People tend to get happy penmanship going in these and start spilling their guts about all the great things they're going to help the government do, and they're giving away their IP. All right. And so the sources sought is simply the same. It is literally the government looking to see who is available to do the work. Whereas the RFI, they may ask questions about, do we have the right approach? Are there contract vehicles we can do this on, and so forth? Understand, there's four things I'm going to talk about: sources sought in RFI, then RFQ, and then RFP. If there's a presentation we do in our boot camp program, we show this to everyone. There is no standard form. There's no SF form, which is government speak for documentation that they use all the time that's been approved. There is no standard form for sources sought or RFIs. There is a standard form for RFQs and RFPs. It's an official form. It's got to be done a certain way, and that's what you respond to. So starting off, there's no standard form. So pretty much we make it up as we go along, generally speaking, for RFI and sources sought. All right. No ding on my friends in the government. It just is what it is. All right. There's not a standard practice for that across the government. The other one I mentioned already is there is no intent to make an award. The government can't make an award directly from that unless they write a sole source justification to someone. Then the last thing I'll talk about is RFP and RFQ. To delineate here, actually I had a conversation with a young lady online who had a situation, and I gave her some advice about RFP versus RFQ that worked out to her benefit. When you respond to an RFP from the U.S. government and you sign it and you send it in, you have now entered into an existing and active contract with the U.S. government as of the minute you submitted that. They can choose to exercise that submission from you and turn it into a bilateral contract. It means you are bound, they are bound. You have to do the work, they have to pay you. Now, there is an out if you choose to use it, and that is before they have considered the offers, you can withdraw, rescind your offer, and no harm, no foul. Okay, generally speaking, but it's in the FAR, says you can do that. RFQs are different. An RFQ, request for quotation, is not considered an offer to the government. It is a quote. When you send one of those into the government, you are not bound. You are not in a contractual agreement because they have to come back to you and say, can I please buy this from you at that price? And then you have 7 days to accept or decline their offer to buy from you. So that's the major difference between the two of those. And this is something that a lot of people don't know. They don't realize when they respond to an RFP that they're legally bound by what they just submitted. And the government says, we want that price to be good for 180 days. Well, a lot can happen in 180 days. The people you had on contingency offer can take other jobs. The prices you got quoted could be no longer valid. And now it's costing you 4 times as much to buy the stuff you're going to buy. And now you're going to lose your tail off. And so that literally is the major difference. Know what you're signing, understand what your obligations are, and just be smart.
No, you said a lot, and all of that was very, very, very valuable. You know what? I'm not even gonna pause because we're gonna go down a rabbit hole. I'm gonna go to number 4. What is the cost of doing business?
So, Curtis, this is your school. This is stuff you talk about all the time, and getting into cost pools and G&A and overhead and all these different things. And simply put, the thing for me is I think people need to understand the impact of the cost of business and doing business on the final numbers. If you don't have a good understanding of the numbers, you can put out any price you want. You have no idea if you are making money or not, quite literally. So there's the first one. But the other one is not having a good command of your cost also limits your ability to develop a competitive price response. You don't know necessarily how to get into the competitive range. And if you do, and now we talk about the cost of doing business, and it takes your company longer and more money to develop the same information as the competition, then you are spending more time and money. Your profit margin's going down while theirs is staying where it is, because in order for you to stay competitive, you got to decrease your margins in order to stay in that range. And
spot on.
so,
Yeah, absolutely.
so the other part, and I'm going to go way back for a second to RFIs for a second. This is another part of the cost that I think a lot of people haven't thought about. Let's say that your company it costs you on average, making this number up, $10,000 in actual cash or man hours to get out a good proposal for your government customer. So let's say that. And you have determined that in order to hit your goals for the year based on your win percentage, that you need to write 12 proposals that year based on your win rate, and your customers to get to your goal numbers. That's great. So you've allocated $120,000, worth of cash or man hours to allocate to doing this. At which point during that planning process did you factor in the 13 RFIs you're going to respond to each month? Because they're taken away from your time and cost of responding to those 12 RFPs. So, a little food for thought.
No, that's good, because you're right. Oftentimes when people think about proposals, they actually think about just the sheer effort, the sheer volume, whether they hired consultants to help them or whether they did it internally or got a little bit of outsourcing support to help them kind of, do that surge support to get the proposal out. But even there's the sunk opportunity cost, because if I'm doing this, I'm not doing that.
There you go.
Sometimes that's what people do not consider when doing the cost of business. Just like they don't consider, sometimes the mediation and the arbitration costs that come from disputes. Those are just the cost of doing business.
Yeah.
Also, the cost of doing business is you wrote a great proposal. You should have won and you didn't. For a whole bunch of reasons that we won't get into for this conversation.
Right.
But that P win should have been there, and you had all indication to say it was, and you just knew you were gonna pull the incumbent, you was gonna pull their card and unseat that prime, and for whatever reason it went a different way.
And it happens every day. So from a cost standpoint, you literally just understand what things cost. Understand that there is a cost. Understand that the little things that you think are only going to take you an hour are stealing you away from other things that might be more important. How do you prioritize what you're going to respond to? This is kind of like pick which kid you like the most, is what it comes down to. I've got a couple good proposals here I want to put in, but I only got capacity to do one. Which one am I going to respond to? That's a real thing.
And that kind of goes back a little bit, when you're talking about, where I spend my time, that goes back to the BD processes.
Yep.
Really making sure you have a solid bid, no bid proposal, because you can't bid everything. And what's my probability of win based on a handful of factors? It doesn't have to be this long, drawn out 30-step process. You can find 5 factors.
Yep.
And say, okay, is this something I should bid or not?
Yeah.
If I'm not
always calculus, right. It's not always calculus. Sometimes trigonometry is good enough.
Absolutely. Okay, Guy, last but not least, number 5 was teaming. What should they know about teaming?
I'm going to get in trouble for this one, Kurt. So teaming. Wow. So let's talk about two types. Let's talk about subcontracting and teaming. All right. Subcontracting, I apply primarily to when you are a small working with a large, okay, or other than small. Teaming is when you work with another small. It's all subcontracting, just so you know. But we kind of parse it out that way. So let me say this. And I want to see, if any of my friends out there in supplier diversity offices want to come and, take umbrage with what I'm about to say. but they don't care about your socioeconomic designations. All right. That is not a primary reason why a company is going to work with you. So, with that being said, when you look at set asides coming out from the government, there's a couple things I want you to understand. It got there because someone made a determination that there were enough companies in that particular group that could do the work. Whether it's woman-owned, 8A, or just plain old small business, somebody determined that was there. You still have a lot of competition to do. And don't just think because it's set aside that that's a shoo-in for you to go win that. But as we were talking earlier about the SBA Scorecard, I brought something up about non-CFO Act companies, those agencies that are not on the scorecard, that are not bound by the FAR in a lot of instances. And so here's the trick. If an agency is not bound by the FAR, the Federal Acquisition Regulations, what it also means is they are not bound by the Small Business Act, all right? Which means that they don't have or don't have to have small business contracting or subcontracting goals. And so when you think about organizations like the CIA or Smithsonian, they all fall under that. FAA is one of them. Heck, FAA just recognized last year HubZone, all right? Been around for all these years. So going in and talking to an agency and leading with, I'm this small business, let me tell you, you go into one of those guys, you might get that look, all right? And it's not a good look either. So my advice for everyone is, I don't believe for a minute that anyone that started a company, spent all those years doing what they did to build this skill and knowledge, to park it behind a socioeconomic designation. So, same time, don't just chase small business set-asides. Curtis has already told you not everything is on sam.gov. Well, let me tell you what's not on sam.gov. Stuff coming from agencies that don't follow the FAR. And because they don't have to do small business set-asides, you're not going to see it come out as a set-aside if that's what you're filtering by. But remember that $30 billion I told you about that companies win that wasn't set aside? Yeah, part of it's there. Agencies will go make the award to who they feel is best to do the work, and the best is not always a company that is other than small. So pay attention to the big picture. Let me offer it this way. I'll close it out this way, Kurt. So if you are coming out with a strategy and you're only looking at opportunities that are set aside for any kind of small business, I want you to envision a map of the U.S. All right, if the entire map of the U.S. represents the fiscal spend, all the contract dollars that they're going to spend that fiscal year, you're looking at like Connecticut, Rhode Island, and Maine. That's it. That's all the set-asides that are out there in the scheme of things. So you are taking yourself out of contention for other work. Oh, well, I'm too small to be a prime. Yeah, guess what? If the U.S. government comes out tomorrow with a $30,000 piece of work, can you do that? Yes, you're a prime. All right, if it's $100,000, can you do it? Yes, you're a prime. Get that out of your head, okay? Prime doesn't mean multi-million-dollar contract. It means a contract with the U.S. government. All right, and how you get there is completely up to you, and how they get there is completely up to them. The government spends money, a lot of money in a lot of different ways, from, a buck to several $1 billion. All right, find your fit.
Absolutely. No, that's good, brother. That's good. I'm gonna stay right there, because if we keep talking, we're gonna go for another hour. And I need them to come back and watch some more videos. The guy, always good to have you, sir. Just go ahead and I'm gonna go ahead and kind of give a little news release. You will see more collaborations from Guy Timberlake and I in 2025.
Absolutely.
Coming to a city or a Zoom terminal near you.
Hey, look, and if we can make it happen, we got to call our sister in too.
Absolutely. Absolutely. The three of us. Absolutely. It's going to be good. With Guy, always Appreciate having you, man. You always drop value. This is going to be one that you guys are going to want to go back and watch over and over, because my friend Guy Timberlake drops gems. But before you get out of here, Guy, please tell the people how they potentially work with you.
Absolutely. So, the American Small Business Coalition, we're celebrating 20 years this year. It's my wife and I and our small team, and everything we do is about you. It is education, training, and coaching. It is all help to help you thrive in the growth cycle in federal contracting. And so if you are looking for, additional resources, if you've already worked with Curtis, and there's something else you want that's more specific, let us know. We'll talk to you. We'll tell you what we do. I will say up front, we're not looking to work with everyone, but we're looking to work with the right ones. And what that means is you can come aboard as a member for as little as $45 a month, or you can go up to our wingman coaching program or things like that and make a larger investment. It's completely up to you. We're never going to pressure you. But the bottom line is, look for me on LinkedIn, Guy Timberlake. You can find me there. My website is www.theaspc.org. And you can always call me direct at 410-381-2380. I'm happy to help.
No, awesome. And I will make sure that information is actually in the description below this video, so folks can get a hold of you, Mr. Guy Timberlake. Well, Guy, man, thank you so much for hanging out with me. Always a pleasure to do these with you. I've known Guy now for, we're coming up on a decade and a half. I believe.
At least, yes.
So it's been a while. And so Guy has been out here evangelizing the government contracting gospel. I would definitely recommend for you to catch a business over breakfast, or just catch one of his events. It will truly be transformational to you and your government contracting journey. Always good to see you, brother.
Hey, Curtis, always appreciate the opportunity to be here. Hey, I'm going to drop that new one on everybody here. You ready?
Yes.
So, folks, if you want to increase your ability to grow in federal contracting, we call it GovCon Growth Ability. You need to give me a call. We'll take care of you.
It's good stuff. Good stuff. Good stuff. Hey, guys, that's all we have for this particular episode. Thank you for taking time to hang out with me today. I hope you found a lot of value in this particular video, and leave me a comment down below. As always, thank you for the super thanks. Thank you for the super chats. Always looking to plug in with you guys. If you have not subscribed to the channel, please subscribe and join the channel. I drop exclusive content on the from the members of the channel. So if you would like to tap in to that exclusive content, we're going to be doing more and more with exclusive Q&As and just bringing you more value for your government contracting journey. But that's all I have for you for this particular video. I'm going to see you guys in a future video, and go back and watch some of my previous videos. I'll see you until next time.